The Book of Destiny. Translation of Kitab-ul-Taqdeer. Author: Ghulam Ahmed Parwez. Translated by Dr. Ejaz Rasool. Glasgow, UK. ISBN number 9798884207042. 18 Chapter 18, Summary of the topic. The Muslim freed himself from action by making Taqdeer an excuse. It is worth casting another glance at everything that has been presented in the previous pages so that all aspects of this important and delicate issue appear perspicuously before us once again. And so that the Quranic realities become fully registered in the mind. 18.1 Inert things, plants, and animals. Allah created the universe and defined and set the scales from the beginning for the path on which the earth and heavens, rivers and mountains, vegetation and rocks, fire and water, so much so that everything organic and inorganic was to tread. After that life was initiated, and, according to the Quranic descriptions, passing through different valleys, traversing its evolutionary stages, it reached the animalistic form. In this link of the process of creation too, everything only had one path before it on which it was to tread, willingly or unwillingly. In other words, up until this stage of the creations, no one had the choice that it could select some path for itself. When the path itself was only one, then the question of choice and selection could not even arise. 18.2 The human form. But when it moved forward from here, then life took a new turn, and it appeared in such a form which the Quran has termed as Khalq-e-Akhir, a new kind of creation. This was the human form. It is stated in Surah Al-Mu'minun. We began the creation of man from a quintessence of clay, inert matter. Then our creative program gradually reached that stage where procreation takes place through reproduction. In this way we made it a fertilized ovum, which rested in the uterus and became established within the female, and this clot we made into a lump, into a leech-like form. Then out of that lump, a foetus of flesh, and then a skeleton of bones was created in it, and then this skeleton was covered by a layer of flesh. 23.14. Up until this point animals are also included equally in the program of creation. The young of every animal passes through these same stages in the uterus of the mother, but after that, then we turned it into another creation altogether. 23.14. What was this creation of another kind? What was the difference between this and animals? What was that characteristic on the basis of which this creation became distinct and superior to the previous links of the creative program? Regarding this, it is stated that Allah infused His ruh into it. In the Arabic language, energy is called ruh. Hence the meaning of this characteristic is that Allah breathed a quintessence of divine energy into it. What happened as a consequence of this? It was bestowed with hearing and sight, senses, and mind, due to which it became capable of reaching some decision by analyzing whatever information reached the mind via the senses. Perception. 32.9. The purpose for which this new procedure was adopted is explained in Surah Al-Dahar in these words. He is bestowed with hearing and seeing, then he is shown the path, and is informed that whoever wishes can adopt it, whoever wishes can reject it. 76. 2-3. At another place it is stated, we placed both paths before him, and told him that he can choose whichever path he wishes from them. 90.10. The creation before this only had one defined path before it, therefore the question of choice and intent simply never arose for them. Two paths, possibilities, were placed before man. In other words, man was made possessor of choice and intent. This was that great characteristic which was not available to any creation before him, only man was endowed with this. Within the universe only the being of Allah was the possessor of choice and intent. Now Allah also bestowed one part of His chief attribute to man, which has been termed nafki ruh. This is the choice and intent of man. as a result of which there is dynamism in the pulse of the universe, and turbulence in the continuously flowing stream of life. Without choice and intent this world would have been a dull abode. Zoo of mountains, rivers, a colorless collection of forests and beasts, cattle and birds. There would have been no sparkling light of beauty and vibrant flame of love in its destiny. 18.3 The enthralling exhibitions of choice and intent. All these are the enthralling exhibitions of Nafki Ruh, because of which this wilderness has become an arena of color and fragrance. If you look at the metaphorical account of Adam, the first introduction to Adam is with this, that both the forces of prostration and transgression have been created and kept within him. It is this very power of choice and intent which is the reason for his success and eminence. It is due to this that he is worthy of obedience from the Malaika and director of other forms of creation. If, in the tussle of life, there are exhilarating attractions, it is owed to this. And if in the ups and downs of life there are colorful circumstances, it is due to its presence. If slumbering melodies awaken in the strings of the continuity of life as a being, it is because of this strumming. And if in the bland water of the spring of life, azure and fragrant waves arise, it is because of this agitation. If there is a beating heart in the breast of the universe, it is because of this dynamism. And if there are tantalizing energies of tumultuous desires in his heart, these are due to this same drive. All in all, if man is man, then it is due to this. And if this world is a world, then it owes itself to this. If this choice and intent had not existed, then man would have been a statue of stone, or just another ordinary thing among the things of the universe. He would never have been worthy of the obedience of the Malaika or capable of harnessing the universe. The truth is that virtue is only that virtue which is enacted despite possessing the power for evil. Obedience is only that obedience which ensues despite having the power to transgress. Appreciation of a display of eminence is only worthy from the one who is an embodiment of loftiness himself. There is joy only in the bowing down of that head on whose forehead the eminences of the whole world are reflected. The one who does not have the power to avenge, what virtue is there in his forgiveness? From the one who does not have the courage to stand up as an equal, his bowing in greeting is a display of slavery. The one who does not have the seat of power beneath his feet, his being saintly is equivalent to beggary. Exercising self-control despite possessing authority is the embodiment of the eminence of humanity. It is from this that strength becomes produced in the self. And only the one in whose self there is strength can declare with pride that, despite inner turmoil, composure is being displayed, there is self-control over the heart through choice. 18.4 The universe is enabled to be harnessed. This was that human being, possessor of the immense power of choice and intent, about whom it is stated that, whatever is in the earth and heavens, Allah has subjected it all to you. Sakkara Lakum. 45. 13. We can comprehend the tafsir, exposition, of Sakkara Lakum with greater ease and transparency compared to previous generations. At the time that I am writing this, I am listening to this news from the United States that the American space rocket, the Apollo 14 mission, has returned successfully and safely with its astronauts. What is the secret of this capability and accomplishment? Just this, that everything in the universe is obeying a well-defined law, and man has been bestowed with this potential that he can discover these laws. In scientific terminology these laws are called the laws of nature. But in the terminology of the Quran these will be called divine mashiat, and the functioning of these things in obedience to these laws will be called their taqdeer. As far as man is concerned, there are two levels in his life. One is the physical life which man and animals have in common. But the second level of his life is that which may be called human life. For this life there is another code of laws, which are known by the term permanent values. This code of laws is bestowed through the laws of Wahi and is now preserved within the Quran. If man keeps these forces of nature, which have been subjected to him, under the obedience of the permanent values, then through this his human life becomes developed. This is what is called the growth and development of the self. 18.5 The status of a moment. Merely harnessing the forces of nature is the status of Adam. That is the status of man. But to keep these forces under the obedience of the permanent values of Allah is the status of a moment. In other words, an ordinary man keeps his choice and intent under his desires and goals, while a moment uses it in the light of the wahi of Allah. Through this his latent potentials become manifested in such a way that other human beings cannot even conceive of this. This was that very Jamaat which the Quran had called al-Alona, the most superior. 3. 139. In the words of Iqbal, a moment always desires to be the most eminent. He does not like anyone to be even his equal. 18.6 Revenge on the Jamaat Imamanin. This was that motive to be superior in eminence spurred on by which the Jamaat Imamanin of the initial era overturned the thrones of Qasr and Kasra in a matter of days, and wrapped up the power base of every system of batil in the world, and it was this very thing which became a thorn in the side of those tyrants with vested interests, and they determined to take revenge for their defeat and failure due to this Jamaat. Following profound analysis, they reached this conclusion. And this was such an open reality which did not require the wisdom of Aristotle to comprehend it. That this is the effect of the teaching of the Quran, which has filled their veins with immense energies of dynamism and fire, and disclosed this secret to them that man writes his destiny with his own hands, and constructs his future using the strength of his own arms. Consequently, they realized that until the time that they are not caused to be estranged from this ideology, it will not be possible to take revenge on them. In that era, this belief of the Magians that the destiny of man is predetermined which no one has the power to change, was prevalent in every religion and every nation. The Quran was a challenge against this life-extinguishing and humanity-destroying ideology. Consequently, through a well-thought-out and orchestrated conspiracy, they started to spread this ideology, subconsciously and imperceptibly, among the Muslims. In the first place, they entangled them in the philosophical complexities of Jabr and Qadr, and in convoluted intellectual discourses. And after this, through fabricated ahadith, the doctrine of Jabr was clothed in the deceptive attire of religious piety. This was that era when the very first Tafsir-i-Tabari, of the Quran was written, and the very first history of the initial era, Tariq-i-Tabari, was compiled. The basis for both of these, Tafsir and Tariq, was oral narrations which were attributed to Rasulullah or his honorable companions. The collections of ahadith were also compiled during this same era. In this way, gradually this doctrine of Jabr also acquired religious authenticity, so much so that it was made a constituent of Iman. 18.7 The ideology of Taqdeer was made commonplace. Due to this ideology of Taqdeer, this idea continued to become widespread that government and adversity, respect and humiliation, wealth and poverty, prosperity and hardship, success and failure, are all in the hands of Allah. Only that happens which Allah wishes, nothing happens as a result of human intellect and planning. Not even a leaf can move without the command of Allah. Hence, what man needs to do is to remain contented in whatever condition Allah keeps him. Remaining contented with the will of Allah is the style of a moment. Whichever individual is viewed by you as being cruel and oppressive, he is the means and instrument for bringing the mashiat of Allah into implementation, hence no feeling of opposition or hatred against him should awaken in your heart. The arrow which pierces someone's heart is not blameworthy, the one who is responsible for it is the one in whose hand is the bow. Hence the oppressed and destitute should bear all kinds of injustices and exploitation happily because this is the will of Allah. Bringing any word of complaint on the lips against this is an affront to the glory of Allah. This was our era of Malukiyat, and it is obvious that these kinds of dogmas suit dictatorial rulers very well. As a result of these they sit back tranquilly to keep doing whatever they wish. Because not even the thought of any complaint can arise against their tyranny and oppression in the hearts of those who are unjustly treated and downtrodden. And then this is also a reality that Malukiyat and the religious priesthood have always been intimately linked like the body and the soul. No pharaoh can maintain his tyrannical rule without the support of a Haman. This is why it was not at all difficult to obtain religious support for these beliefs. This is that reality to which Iqbal refers in his famous poem, Iqbal's Ki Majlis-e Shurat, in which Iqbal is shown to be stating proudly that I taught the lesson of Taqdeer to the poor. 18.8 The devastations of mysticism. In order to dress up these authentications with even more holiness, a destructive maslak like Tasawwuf, mysticism, was introduced among Muslims. It should be made clear that the word Tasawwuf neither appears in the Quran, nor is there any trace of it in our initial era. This is also an addition from our era of Malukiyat. According to this maslak, not only was this opium being fed to the oppressed and destitute that whatever is happening to you is taking place due to the will of Allah. There is no fault whatsoever in this of these tyrannical rulers. Instead, they even went so far as to say that Allah forbid. In a way, Pharaoh had the right that he should declare that I am your Rabb, Most High. 79.24. Because Pharaoh was not detached from the being of Haqq, although his appearance was that of a pharaoh. The poet Hafiz did not dare to go that far, and satisfied himself by saying that although the original sin was not owed to our misdeed, O Hafiz, you ought, nevertheless, to proceed to be polite and courteous, and admit that the sin was indeed ours. Iqbal said to Murshid Rumi that the ideology of Taqdeer is very insolvable, to which he replied that it is not such a complex issue. The matter is clearly evident that the ability to fly is available to an eagle and falcon, as well as to a vulture and crow. On the basis of their inner nature, falcons acquire access to kings, while vultures and crows, because of their natural instinct, roam around desperately scavenging for carrion. Maulana Rumi made an observation about birds which have been created constrained by the creator of nature, and applied the outcome of this observation of his to man, to whom Allah has given wings and instructed to use these as you wish. In this way Tasawwuf dissolved the ideology of Taqdeer into the very particles of the blood of Muslims. The technique of Tasawwuf is that it presents its beliefs and concepts through tangible metaphors and allegories, and has these acknowledged as principles. These metaphors and allegories are very alluring and mesmerizing. This is, in fact, poetry. These metaphors become glued to the heart and mind of man, and presuming them to be established principles, he becomes infatuated with these beliefs. Proponents of Tasawwuf never allow these to be scrutinized using logic and reasoning. Because according to them, intellectual reasonings are totally untrustworthy, they are well known to be deadly enemies of intellect and reasoning, in fact, also of knowledge and vision. Through the non-Quranic interpretations of tawakkul, sabr, shukr, remaining contented with the will of Allah, etc. The maslak of Kankayat, monasticism, imposed death on the nervous system of this nation in such a way that it became reduced to a heap of ashes before our very eyes. These are those death-inviting dogmas which are continuing to prevail among us as a legacy for centuries, and which are continually and persistently repeated from every mihrab and pulpit, and are ingrained in the depths of the hearts in every monastery and abbey. The consequence of this is that the same nation from whose gaze the Taqdeers of the world once used to transform, today it is continually shedding tears over its own Taqdeer. The one from whose frown the fortune of nations used to be overturned, today is sitting with its head between its knees, helpless and captive, due to the writing on its forehead by its own hands. That nation about which it was declared that the earth, sky, moon, sun, and stars have been subjected to your control, its state is such that the Kafir and Mulhid, non-Muslims, of the world are sending probes and spacecrafts to the moon and sun. And this theist who believes his Taqdeer to be under the control of the stars, is wandering around among fortune tellers seeking his fortune, and does not comprehend that. How can a crystal gazer know the status of your eminence, because you are a living entity, not under the spell of a star. Has the gaze of the heavens ever witnessed a greater revolution than this? 18.9 Our duplicity. Have you observed how the fortunes of nations change with an alteration in one belief? The power of beliefs is so unassailable and their grip is so strong that no other power on earth can compete with it. But our condition is strange. Since this belief that everything happens from the direction of Allah cannot work in practical life, hence we remain constantly trapped in a quandary. An individual murders a relative of ours. The belief that we hold is that all this takes place by the command of Allah. The age of the victim was only destined to be this much. It was written in his destiny to be killed like this. No one can alter what Kismat has written. This is simply what Allah willed, this is what we keep repeating from our lips, and at the same time we launch a charge against the murderer. When we launch a charge, on the one hand we say that only that will transpire which is willed by Allah. But at the same time we take every possible step for the success of the court case, even to the extent of ignoring the distinction between what is legitimate and what is illegitimate. If successful, then we shower praises on our good planning. If we fail, then we declare that this is simply how Allah had willed the matter. When a child becomes sick, we hold this belief that Allah has pre-written when he is going to fall sick, how many days the sickness is going to last for, and what its outcome will be. But in practice we run around for his treatment. If he does not improve, then we alter the treatment. Every day we ask the doctor when the fever will break. We implore the doctor to do something so that the child can get well quickly. When he recovers, then we expect praise from everyone for our efforts and planning, and we spread the word about the expertise of the physician. If he dies, then we declare it to be divine will and, sighing deeply, announce that we did not leave any stone unturned to cure him, but when this was the age that was pre-written for him, then what can we do about it? And if someone questions that, that is all very well, that whatever is to happen is predetermined, that no one can change Kismat, so then why do you run around so much? Can whatever is written in someone's Kismat change as a result of this? In response to this, it is stated that whatever is pre-written by Taqdeer is certainly hacked, but it is also a duty to undertake planning. Every individual repeats these kinds of words and no one thinks about what they are saying. If Taqdeer is immutable, then why is planning a duty? 18.10 The consequence of this tussle. On the one hand there is this iman that Taqdeer is immutable, we are fearful that by denying this, we may become kafir. On the other hand we are also afraid that if we do not offer treatment, the child will die. If we do not make efforts and endeavors, the court case will be lost. This is that dilemma in which we remain unconsciously trapped at every turn in life. The outcome of this is that because of this confusion and uncertainty, our schemes also remain unsuccessful. No aim which is taken with trembling hands can hit its intended target, if we have iman in the concreteness of the laws of Allah. Then after our failure we should pause and reflect at what juncture we took a step in opposition to the relevant law. What deficiency remained in our assessment, what flaw was there in our plan, and when we have ascertained this, we should strive for this again from the start. It cannot be the case that our effort is according to the law of Allah, and we do not succeed. If the seed, land, and all the protective measures are correct, then why should the crop not grow? And if the iman is that whatever happens is according to the command of Allah, that the taqdeer of man is immutable and that planning cannot alter it, then why plan for matters facing us? Remain sitting contentedly at home. Allow whatever happens to take place. And gradually, by adopting a route of escape from the challenges of life, keep reciting Allah, Allah inside caves. This kind of outlook on life leads man nowhere. 18.11 The correct path of action. This is that tussle in which this ummah is continuing to suffer for centuries, and its outcome is staring us in the face. But there is no need to be despondent about this. The living and eternal Book of Allah is among us, which is the authority and criterion for our beliefs and masalak. The requirement is for us to examine every prevalent belief of ours in the light of this book, that which is supported by it, consider it worthy of acceptance. That which it refutes, reject it. When, in this way, we will become possessors of the correct Quranic concepts, then we will acquire our past glory once more. This is because the power to smash Taqdeer still remains within him, whom the unwise declare to be a prisoner of Taqdeer. The focal point of Quranic teaching is the law of requital, that is this law that the consequence of every deed of man always catches up with him. It is obvious that this is only possible when man is acknowledged to be responsible for his deeds. If the situation is such that whatever he does, there is no provision in it for his choice and intent, everything is being done from him like a machine, then the question of reward and punishment for him will not even arise. According to this concept, the law of requital, the procedure for righteousness and guidance from Allah, and the life of the hereafter, all become meaningless. Descending from here, then according to the doctrine of Jabr, the worldly system of justice also becomes redundant. When the argument for the defense of the accused is that I did not commit this crime with my own choice and intent. It was written like this by Allah. That is why it occurred like this. He neither asked me about it at the time he was writing this, nor was I given this choice that I should not act in this way. Therefore why should I be declared a criminal? If this reasoning is declared as being correct, then no one who is accused of anything can be declared to be a criminal. And when someone is not even acknowledged to be a criminal, then how can there be any punishment for his action? And not only the system of justice, according to this belief even the code of ethics no longer holds any standing. When man is accepted as being constrained, then no individual will be declared as praiseworthy for good deeds, nor will he deserve to be reprimanded for his wrong deeds. We can neither call a goat well-mannered, nor a lion as having an evil character. This is because the former is not docile through its own choice. Neither is the latter a beast of prey through its choice and intent. The question of good conduct and bad character only arises when someone is acknowledged as possessing the freedom to choose. Have you noticed that no matter from what aspect it is looked at, the prevalent ideology of Taqdeer cannot be declared as being worthy of acceptance? Contrary to this, the living evidence of its devastations is our own current condition. It is a fundamental law of the Quran that no matter what trouble reaches you, it is brought about through your own hands. 42. 30. The cause for this is either some mistake of your own, or the wrong system of your society is responsible for this. If this teaching of the Quran had been in front of us, and the edifice of our ideology and feats had been raised on this, then it would not have been possible that we would have fallen into deep and horrific abysses of humiliation and degradation, and even if we had fallen into them due to some mishap, that we would not then have endeavored to extricate ourselves from them. Remember, Allah neither pushes any nation into the abysses of humiliations, nor does he lift up any nation which has fallen into these abysses and take it out himself. In the domain of Amr, it is the Mashiat of Allah which is operating, in which man cannot interfere. In the arena of creation and destruction, in the world, man is made the possessor of Mashiat, in which Allah does not interfere despite possessing limitless powers. This concept of human freedom is the unique teaching of the Quran, which is not found in any religion of the world. 18.12 An objection. It is said that if Allah is made to be bound by laws in this way, then this casts an aspersion on his being omnipotent. This objection is based on a superficial and flawed outlook. If some other being places any kind of constraint on the authority of Allah, then from this an aspersion is certainly cast on Allah being omnipotent. But if Allah places this constraint on himself through his own choice, then no aspersion is cast on his being omnipotent. This is in fact another evidence and proof of his being possessor of sovereignty and authority. When he establishes some laws through his choice and intent, and along with this declares that there will be no change in these laws, then how can there be any aspersion cast on his authority from this? 10. 64. Undoubtedly, he can bring about a change in these laws, but when he himself has made this decision that he will not make any change in them, then who else can create a change in them? 18.13 An immutable command becomes a law. It is also stated that by obedience to the laws of Allah, the being of Allah becomes removed from the middle, obedience remains to his laws, not to Allah. The ones who raise this objection are those people who declare day and night that we should obey the commands of Allah. The question is that if by obeying the commands of Allah, he is not removed from the middle, how can Allah become excluded from the middle by obeying the laws of Allah? When we obey the laws of some country, then if it is not obedience to this country, then who is it obedience to? Those who raise such objections do not know that 1. When some command is given on a permanent basis, that is, it is decreed that this command will remain immutable, and 2. Together with this, it is also stated that by acting in accordance with it the outcome will be such and such, then this is called a law. The immutable commands of Allah are themselves his laws, which it is essential to obey. When Allah commanded water to flow down a slope and also announced that it will always do this, then this command of Allah became his law. The commands of Allah which were and are implemented in the universe were immutable from the very beginning, in the form of the laws of nature. His commands about human life, which were continually given through wahi, became automatically immutable after the ending of Nubuwwat. And the Quran also informed us what consequences will become established by acting according to them, and what will be the outcome of transgressing them. Hence, what doubt remains in there being laws too? It is said that why not say the will of Allah or his command, why say obedience to his law? What is so important about words that we place so much significance on their alteration? The pearl hunter is interested in the pearl, not in the shell. It is true that words are not an aim in themselves, therefore altering them does not hold much importance. But when some words or terms acquire such a meaning which then obscures from our sight that aim for which they were originally defined, and that wrong meaning becomes commonplace, then in order to bring that correct aim before us again, it is essential that in place of these words, those words should be used which possess the correct meaning. The concept which arises in our minds from the will of Allah or the command of Allah is that these can change anytime. Today his will is one thing, and tomorrow it will be something else. By saying the law of Allah, its being immutable becomes clear. 18.14 The difference between a command and a law. But there is another far-reaching consequence of the concept of command or will, and that is very important. An individual commands his servant to go and give this letter to some gentleman. Now the servant neither knows what is written in this letter, nor why this letter is being sent to this person. His task is only to obey this command and no more, nor can he ask his master why did he give him such a command. So much so, that in this letter and its dispatch there is no personal benefit of his, some purpose of his master is implicit in it. If he is asked, the most he can say is that I obey the commands of my master in this eager manner because through this he feels pleased, and I desire his happiness. The manner of the obedience with which we undertake the commands of Allah, under the concept of command and will, is exactly this. But if his law is obeyed, then its shape and outcome will be something different. It can be illustrated as follows. The doctor advises you to take this medicine, use it in this way, and together with this, take these precautions. From this, after 3 days at the most, your suffering will be eradicated. You follow his instructions. If, after 3 days, your problem is not resolved, then you wonder where did something go wrong. In this program, was the diagnosis of the doctor wrong? Was the prescription incorrectly dispensed? Was the composition of the medicine impure? Was some error committed in taking it? Were the correct precautions not able to be taken? And after this investigation, you try to resolve this fault and rectify this error, and keep on doing this until the time that your suffering is not eradicated. In other words, when we follow a law, it can be ascertained from its outcome whether it is being followed correctly or not. 18.15 is the outcome of a deed becoming established or not. Together with all the commands which the Quran has given, it has also stated that if you do this, then this effect will be established. In the terminology of the Quran, a command is called kitab and its purpose or outcome is called hikmat. When it has stated that kitab and hikmat are both sent down from the direction of Allah, then it means that Allah who has established these laws has also informed us that the result of acting on them will lead to this outcome. Now we have to see whether whatever we are doing, is that effect which Allah had informed us about becoming established from it or not. If that effect is not becoming established, then we will need to think where are we making an error, and then we'll need to rectify it. For example, the Quran gave the command of establishment of salat, and together with this also informed us that salat will definitely prevent from shameful and corrupt practices. Fasha and Munkar. 29. 45. The outcome of the establishment of salat will be that shameful and corrupt practices will no longer persist among individuals and in society. We are observing the command of salat, and what is taking place in reality is that namas are being continuously recited, while shameful and corrupt practices are multiplying among individuals. In fact, among the namazah themselves, and in society. This practice of ours is continuing for centuries, and these evils are also becoming commonplace in society for centuries. We never stop to think, why is this happening? If we had accepted the establishment of salat to be the law of Allah, and its outcome the prevention of shameful and corrupt practices. Fasha and Munkar. 29. 45. Then when this outcome did not materialize, we would have stopped to think why is this the case? We could not have said that the one who declared this, Allah forbid, has done so wrongly. Allah forbid that such an outcome cannot emerge from the establishment of salat. We could only have been forced to admit that there is some flaw in this practice of ours because of which its promised outcome is not being established. And after this we could have verified what that error is using the light of the Quran. If we had rectified it, then its promised outcome would have taken shape and appeared before us. This is merely an example which we have given. This is the pattern of the whole teaching of the Quran. In this, every command and principle has been noted in the status of a law, and we have been informed what outcome will be established from it, and how this will appear before you in this very world. The outcome in the hereafter is over and above this. If this had not been elucidated in the Quran, then we would have had no means to evaluate this fact, whether or not these commands are being acted upon correctly. We ignored this hikmat of the Quran, the consequence of which is that the nation undergoes innumerable hardships in obeying, in their own mind, these commands, and its condition is also deteriorating further with each passing day. The difference between religion, madhab, and deen is that in religion commands are obeyed, and the aim from this is to seek the pleasure of Allah, and that is it. Under deen the laws of Allah are followed, whose lively and dynamic, prosperous and successful outcome appears before us. When Islam was before us in the status of deen, then the concept of Allah was that of a giver of law, and the robustness and stanchness of obedience to his commands was to be judged by their outcomes. This was the concept about Allah, and this was also the concept of the state established in his name. In this, too, obedience was to the law, not to the wish of the rulers. After this, when deen converted into a religion, then the concept about Allah became like that of an absolute dictator, and the status of rulers also like that of dictators. It is as a consequence of this very thing that while today we understand the meaning of obedience to commands, we do not understand the meaning of obedience to laws. Remember, whatever kind of concept exists in a nation about Allah, the map of the society of that nation will also be the same. Allah of the Quranic concept, despite his limitless powers, is Allah of procedure and law. Hence the nation which accepts him will be a nation which follows procedure and law in the world to an extremely high degree. This is the practical meaning of Taqdeer, that is, obedience to the laws of Allah through one's own choice and intent. If this meaning of Taqdeer appears before the nation, then the Taqdeer of this nation could transform in days. The reality of the teaching of the Quran is, when the Quran, descends on the human self, it brings about a change in it. And when the self changes, due to the Quran, the world becomes something else, and the reality of the earth and the heavens changes into something else. List of some other works by the author. 3. Exposition of the Holy Quran. 4. Islam, a challenge to religion. 5. The Quranic laws. 6. Reasons for the decline of Muslims. 7. Letters to Tahira. 8. Lughatul Quran, Dictionary of Quranic Words and Terms. Volume I and II. Available from Amazon. 9. The Quranic System of Sustenance. Available from Amazon. 10. The Life in the Hereafter. What does the Quran say? Available from Amazon. 11. What is Islam? Available from Amazon. 12. The Status of Hadith in Islam. Available from Amazon. 13. The Human Self and Allah. Available from Amazon. 14. The Human Self and Iblis. Available from Amazon. 15. The Meanings of the Quran, Volume 7. Available from Amazon. 16. The Meanings of the Quran, Volume 1. Available from Amazon. 17. The Quranic Perspective on Apostasy, Slavery, and Concubines. Available from Amazon. 18. The Finality of the Prophethood and the Ahmadiyya. Available from Amazon. These books available free for download at www.Parwez.tv. These books are also available from Talooi Islam Trust. 25, B. Gulberg 2. Lahore, 54660, Pakistan. Email, talooiislam@gmail.com. Telephone, 0092 0 4235753666, WhatsApp 00923005842023, and 00923104800818.